Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Patch 11.2 Season 3 content has been live for a number of weeks. And so far on this channel, we've taken a look at how classes are performing when it comes to their popularity within PvE content, but we haven't really taken a look at them from a PvP angle just yet. We have been holding a lot of 5-5 duels ever since the season launch, however, and it's been a lot of fun watching everybody get stronger and stronger as they finalize their tier set bonuses, with some classes getting incredibly crucial power spikes once they collect the full sets. On this channel, predominantly we focus on dueling content for PvP, though I personally do have a vested interest in seeing how the meta is overall going to evolve when it comes to every other proper bracket out there. So I did some diving through the data, and I wanted to see exactly which classes are looking like the most popular picks so far for the season. And I want to compile this data together to find out what are the top 5 most popular classes so far. Now, for some classes in particular, we do have certain specs that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting to increase their popularity. So in those situations, I will call out when a certain spec is really leading the charge. But this video is basically going to cover all of the most popular classes out there so far for the Season 3 content of War Within. At least for the time being, because we're not done gearing for the season just yet. And I'm wondering how this data will evolve once everybody has finished gearing out their character in the best PvP gear possible, and how that will potentially impact the overall brackets of the season. As always, if you guys want to see more videos like these for the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. When it comes to the popularity scale, looking through all the data, Hunters stand out the most as like the most played class right now, specifically carried by the range specs, Beast Mastery and Marksmanship, which isn't super surprising, but Survival should still be added to the list because Survival really plays very similarly to both of those specs. They just play a little up close instead of down range, but the kit is relatively the same. And like whenever you build for one of the specs, you can usually pick up Survival as long as you get yourself a weapon as well. And overall, put together, Hunter just ends up being the most popular across every single PvP bracket by a fairly large margin. All 3 specs are really good in very specific situations though. Like, for the most part, it's going to be the range specs that are doing a lot of heavy lifting, but Survival can also perform well. Like, in BG content, Hunters are doing really well. 2v2 content, Beastmaster's tearing it up. In certain other content, Survival is doing really well as well, but generally, Hunters are performing well all across the board. They have the most, on average, popularity across every bracket out there right now. Especially Marksmanship, which has been, I feel like, has been usually tailing Beast Mastery somewhat in its shadow a decent bit, because BM can be really good in solo, can be really good for that consistency 3's games, 2's games in particular, but Marksmanship, with the burst it has gotten and the number of reworks it has gotten, I think we're getting to the point where Marksmanship pretty much is nearly back to as strong as it was from way back in the heyday, but it's gotten a lot better. And right now, if you do see a Marksmanship Hunter, don't be surprised if the Black Arrow ability and their burst combo can pretty much wipe out your entire health bar. They've been doing some really nutty things at the moment, and they've gotten just a lot more popular since then. Again, I mentioned this earlier, Survival is still very good. Comparing them by themselves against other melee, it does feel like they're a bit of a lone wolf of a Hunter spec. But they still are performing well. They just have always been a bit of a black sheep of the 3 Hunter specs, whether we're talking about like PvE content or PvP content, and that still carries over for them in PvP as well, but it doesn't mean that they're not performing well or unable to be played at some of the higher end content. I also feel like I should at least highlight one of the healers within the roster, and I feel like out of all the healers out there right now, the one that has the most popularity is Mistweaver Monk across all brackets. They are exceptionally strong within any battleground content. So you look at it, RBGs or BG Blitz, there's a lot of Mistweaver representation, especially at the top end, the most difficult content, the most difficult brackets, but they're also incredibly, and I mean severely popular in 2v2 content, which is like the most casual version of arenas that super easy to queue and super easy to get into, in my opinion. Because sometimes solo queue, wait can be actually quite arduous, but 2v2s, they've always had a soft place in my heart personally. Always enjoyed them specifically, and they're really popular there by a wide margin. they're just overall the most popular healer across all the brackets. And that may change as the season goes on, but at the moment, they're having a really good time. What really makes him stand out, and I feel like this early in the season, is strong single target healing, which maybe is why they're doing super well in 2v2 content. They're just able to outcompete numerically against other healers, which gives them that advantage, that edge against other compositions. But also the burst healing and single target output can be exceptionally helpful for helping whoever's being focused down in a battleground and just keeping them alive almost all by themselves. They also have an incredibly fun kit. If you've ever played a monk in general for PvP, Mistweaver in particular, I mean, you have some of the best mobility in the game, and movement can be a huge savior in terms of just like dodging away from damage or evading any rough situations. Plenty of crowd control to help your team set up kills, with plenty of opportunity for you to rotate that crowd control in a way where you're not even meeting diminishing returns with the rest of your team, which is really good for setting up all those kill opportunities, as well as actually very strong damage. And I've always been a huge fan of healers that have a hybrid build where you could do some damage output if you build correctly, and monks right now have some of the best out there. You could actually really put in some kill potential and kill pressure. So if you're getting trained by a melee DPS like a rogue behind the pillar, you can actually turn around some pressure back onto them and potentially even put them in a situation scoring your team potentially a possible win, which is always really fun to play into. Another DPS spec that's also very popular is the Balance Druid. Druids in general are doing pretty good in terms of the popularity, like if you were to combine all 3 and even 4 specs if you wanted to, but if you were to combine just the Feral, Resto, and Balance Druid, generally have some decent popularity, but a lot of that heavy lifting, at least right now for the season, is being done by Balance Druids. So I'm not necessarily making it like Druid is popular, but Boomkit in particular is looking very popular if you are going to be picking up a Druid. One, they are incredibly popular and strong within Battleground content, and that is really what's giving them a lot of that edge. RBGs or BG Blitz, BG Blitz are really popping off right now, dot the world and just melt everybody down. Throw the Boomkit in the middle of a big team fight, and you're going to be watching that class absolutely dominating, either focusing targets down with big star surges or melting everything evenly with Starfalls and Rot. It is absolutely huge and performs really well in high target count PvP situations. It also has a very strong damage for a caster and pretty consistent output as well, because Boomkits, they are naturally usually very bursty, but they also lean into the Keeper of the Grove to give them like mini burst every time they summon Force of Nature, so it gives them an opportunity to set up a potential kill. You basically are just playing into the burst playstyle, but you're just getting mini bursts, a lot more of them in between, which makes it feel more consistent damage rather than just like waiting every 3 minutes for a big blowout burst, which I think helps them out a lot as well. Outside of this, great mobility for a caster, especially when it comes to group content. In duels in particular, we notice Boomkins can perform, a little bit rougher because the self-healing and having to maintain yourself without a healer pocket healing you can definitely be rough. But if you do got a pocket healer, I feel like they're really good for that group capability. Definitely a good set of defenses in order to survive quite a bit of onslaught. And also they have really good control with Cyclone, which can help them set up some fantastic CC, especially if they're able to switch those Cyclones around. And that double Incarnation or Celestial Alignment Burst, whichever one you end up running, is also exceptionally good with Whirling Stars. Ends up just basically giving them more opportunities to have a really big Hambo burst, especially with a little setup from Keeper of the Grove as well. The keen-eyed observers would have noticed that we haven't mentioned a single melee spec so far in this list, a single melee class in general, unless you want to count Mistweaver as a melee healer, but Retribution Paladin will be the very first melee that actually ends up getting quite a lot of popularity overall throughout all the brackets. Incredibly popular in 3v3 content, solo shuffle content, but also very popular in battleground content as well. So BG Blitz in particular, they're doing really good. Even though they don't really have the most fun roles in BG Blitz, usually you'll place a ret on defense. That is, it is a viable role to play in a BG. You are earning points that way, and you're really good at defending a node. So they really do have some playability in group content specifically, and a very specific role that they excel in. Overall, they're just the most popular melee class by a country mile compared to everybody else. Just looking at all the different brackets, combining them together, but also in certain brackets like solo shuffle in particular, the amount of reds we have right now based on the data given is overwhelming. This definitely has been a class that a lot of players gravitated to. So if you've always just wanted to pick up like a really fun melee that seems like it'll be performing pretty well for the season, Retribution Paladin may just be the way to go. There's a reason why other players have gravitated towards this spec in particular. Whether play him as the big Templar build with the double hammer, which is so incredibly satisfying. I mean, watching those hammer crits back to back, oh, I love it. I personally enjoy it. It's my favorite. I've always been a big sucker for big bursty classes, but even if you don't want to go for like big burst damage, but rather go for like constant pressure to sustain, maybe a bit of good survivability. Herald of the Sun is also really good. With the tiers that he got, you just basically don't really have any downtime in your damage. You're constantly just having a go, and the downlight dot can really melt some people, put out incredible pressure, and that could also even be turned into some really good solid self-healing. So even in terms of personal survivability between the immunes and that additional self-healing from Herald, Retribution Paladin feels pretty solid overall as a class that looks like they have a pretty good kit so far heading into the season. Now, the next class, a proper class that can make this list, will be the Warlock, because all three specs, if you actually combine them together, they essentially make up the overall popularity, combining from all the brackets, of that of Retribution Paladin. This just shows you just how popular Red Pally is, but Warlocks are basically a close second, actually exactly a second to Reds when you combine all the specs together. Generally, Warlocks are played in all forms of content. 2v2s, 3v3s, BG Blitz, Solo Shuffle, RBGs, everything. They are actually quite popular as an overall playstyle. All three specs, however, all of them do have certain content that they really excel in. So it's not that Demonology is the best everywhere. It's actually going to be specs like Demonology is really good in 3v3 content, while Affliction will be really good in Battleground content, especially in high target counts where they could just rot the entire team, while Destruction will be really good in a very specific field as well. All three specs have a very specific core aspect of PvP that they excel in. So if you're someone who is not completely against switching around different specs, you always will have some sort of a spec that is viable and even excels in whatever content you are looking to play into. It also helps out that gearing a Warlock for all three specs, at least when it comes to just raw stats and items, you're basically getting the same items. So switching around, it's only just all about learning the playstyle and the mechanics of each spec, but not necessarily having to re-gear them from scratch all over again, which is super nice. But in general, we are seeing quite a lot of Warlocks, at least at the beginning of the season so far. I honestly thought this class, fifth class at the end of the list, might have actually been Mage. I kind of felt there was a lot of them out there, but apparently there's just numerically raw numbers of players, a lot more Warlocks out there playing the game right now in PvP brackets. So if you are looking to pick up a class at the moment, Warlock has generally been a really good option. They are, on average, really tanky when it comes to raw casters. They also have very good mobility that have developed over the last few expansions, and I feel like this is the most mobile Warlock has been outside of maybe Shadowlands with a Night Fae ability, and they overall feel very sturdy. Tier sets are looking really good for them as well, no matter what kind of hero spec you play into, with the spec that you play, whether you play Affliction as a Soul Harvest, or Demonology as a Diabolist, or Destruction as a Hellcaller, for instance. All of those feel pretty good to play and feel very impactful. So whatever you end up playing as a Warlock, all three specs are actually looking kinda good so far for the season. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like, as I would very much appreciate it. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially with some of the upcoming content updates for War Within and possibly for the Alpha of Midnight. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.